Okay, so I want to talk about Revit and its fixture units and how it looks. Okay, so looking at Hunter's curve and how it relates to hot water and cold water. First off, when you're using your systems, like these piping systems, right? This is cold water, it's hot water. So in the hot water system, where is my system type hot water, pipe type copper hot water, you go to your piping systems, right click, go to the type properties, and make sure that your water is set at the right temperature for hot and cold, and your flow conversion method. For hot water, it should be flush tanks. And I'll say okay to that at 140 degrees. For cold water, let's go to cold water. I'm gonna right click on it, and I'm calculating all cold water at 60 degrees, and the flow conversion is predominantly flush valves. Okay, you can change these. You have two choices: flush valves or flush tanks. And for hot water, it's flush tanks. Okay, so I'll say okay to that. And the other thing I wanted to point out here is when you are looking at Revit, and at the same time on the side on your desk somewhere, you have your Hunter curves calculations or your chart, right? And there are columns for your Hunter curves. There's three columns. There's a fixture unit column, there's a GPM column for flush tanks, and there's a GPM column for flush valves. And knowing all of this information, you can relate that back to Revit and how it's calculating this flow value. And at the bottom here are the fixture units, okay? So what I wanted to point out in this case was, let's go with cold water and then we can do the hot water, okay? So the cold water, because it's set to flush valves, we can look at the fixture units at 188 or 190 fixture units, and according to Revit, it will produce 87 GPM. And according to the Hunter curves, you can look on your list, wherever that is, and for fixture units, 188, 190. For flush valves, you get 87 GPM, which is close to or exactly, I can see that Revit is following Hunter curves when it comes to the cold water at this level, meaning fixture unit level. So if I go, let's go down to, I think this is, so at 10.5, which is quite a bit less than 188, 190 fixture units. And let's see if it follows Hunter curves. The flow is 27. And if we look at our table of Hunter curves and look at fixture units, 10.5, and you can see that on the flush valve side of the Hunter curves, you get 27 GPM, okay? Now, on the hot water side, it's a little bit different. The hot water in Revit, we have 13.5 GPM. And so we look at Revit, and Revit says that 13.5 GPM, 13.5 fixture units, according to Hunter's curve, will give us 16 or 17 GPM. So if you look at our table in the conversion of fixture units to equivalent GPM, same thing. 13.5 fixture units or 14 will produce, for flush tanks, will give us 11 GPM. which is a little bit, just 6 GPMs off of what Revit is given to us, okay? So it's not an exact. So what I'm assuming that at this point, the Revit is following Hunter curves on the cold water side. But if I increase my fixture units for the hot water, and let's use this lavatory as an example. So I'm going to go in and increase my fixture units for the hot water, okay? So let's go down and change this hot water fixture units from 1.5 to, let's say it's 25 fixture units. I'm going to change that back, but we know that the hot water fixture units for lavatory is not 25. It's 1.5, but I'm just trying to make a point here with this demonstration in terms of Hunter curves. So I'm going to say yes to all of these. Do I want to replace the file? Do I want to overwrite the parameter? And I'm going to say yes. And so when we go back to our hot water fixture units, we can see that it has increased to 60, right? 60.5. And Revit is saying that according to Hunter curves, at 60.5 fixture units, your flow is 32 GPM. So I'll go to my chart at fixture units. If my fixture units in the conversion rate is 60, then according to Hunter curves for flush tanks, the GPM is 32. So it eventually catches up, or it converges to the curve on the Hunter curves somewhere, right? Let's go back and try 15 fixture units for the hot water and see what Revit does. So I'm going to go in and change my fixture units for the hot water side, and I'm going to change it to 15. Okay, change that, say yes, and okay to this. I want to save changes, and I want to replace everything, including the parameter. Okay, so now when I click on my hot water, and it says it's 40 fixture units and 26 GPM. If I go to my table at 40 fixture units, I get 25 GPM for flush tanks. So it's starting to diverge as I get less and less fixture units. So I guess at 40, let's change. Okay, so at 40, it starts to diverge a little bit from the curve, or it starts to converge to the curve, because we know at 25 fixture units or 60 fixture units, it's at 32 in this case. So let's do an extreme case and see what Revit does. I'm going to go back and edit my fixture units, my hot water fixture units, because at 188, we know that the cold water side is going to give us about 87 GPM, right? Which is what Hunter curve is telling us. So let's make an extreme case. Hot water fixture units, what did we use? 25, 35, let's use 45, let's use 50 fixture units. Let's get up into the curve and see what Revit is going to give to us. So we know that it was okay at 60 fixture units. Now let's see if we go out and extend the curve a little bit. At 110 fixture units. 110 fixture units, Revit says that Hunter curve will give us 45 GPM. So I'm going to go to Hunter curve at 110 fixture units between 44 and 48. It should be 44 and 48. Yeah, I mean, it's okay. It's 45. Hunter curves for 100 fixture units for flush tanks is 44, and then it skips to 120 fixture units, and that's 48. So between 44 and 48, we get 45. So looks like on the hot water side, it catches up. The hot water catches up to the Hunter curves, and it's probably pretty good after that. you know what? Let's go to another extreme case for the hot water side again. So let's go and change the hot water. Let's change the hot water and the cold water. I'm going to make this 100. And the cold water, I'm going to make it 20, because we know that there's a lot of cold water. There's already a lot of cold water load on I'm going to make it 15 in the system already, so I don't want to overload the system here. I'm going to keep that, and say yes to my parameters. And let's do cold water first. Let's see what we have. 350 fixture units. So 350 fixture units, at 300, it is 110. At 400, it's 126. Okay, so let's go. So between 110 and 126, okay, so it's 117. So it's within 100 curves on the cold water side. Let's see what happens with the hot water side. Hot water, 210 fixture units. So we have the flow. Revit says the 100 curves should be 67. So when I check the 100 curves for flush tanks at 210, says between 65 and 70. Okay, so it starts to catch up after, what was it? After 15 fixture units on the hot water side. So at 20 fixture units for hot water, the curve starts to merge, and it looks like it's going to be okay. So I just wanted to point that out. If anybody's taking notes on how Revit does its calculations, that's a little bit of information for you. You can go in and research some of that on your own if you want to. But usually what I do is look at this number, the velocity. And I always like to keep my cold water between 6 and 8, which is standard for the industry, and the hot water between 3 and 5 feet per second. So, but it was fun just looking at what you need to do when you're setting up your systems. Be sure to set up your cold water and hot water and let Revit know what you're doing. Because if you go in and you don't change these numbers, Revit is going to assume that your hot water system and your fluid, where is it? This hot water. Okay, your hot water system type is going to be cold water. Okay, if you don't change it, if you keep this at flush valves for hot water, then it's going to calculate as if it was cold water. So you want to keep that, especially if you're on the lower end of the curve. Okay, looks like on the high end, it doesn't matter if it's, well, no, it does matter. It does matter, because at 225 fixture units for flush tanks, you get 70 GPM, and for 225 cold water fixture units, you get 97 GPM. Okay, so there's a big difference. So you might want to watch out for that. Okay, guys. Well, I hope that helped, and I will talk to you guys later.